So I was telling you that in 1940s, 50s and so on, right? Then in 1950s and 60s, ceramic molds, modular iron, semiconductors, continuous casting, cold extrusion, gas metal and gas tungsten arc welding, electrical and chemical machining, automatic controls, right? So if you see that, right, dates, what was happening in metals and casting, what was happening in various other materials, what were the forming and shaping technologies, what were the joining technologies, and what were the tools and machining processes, right? The last part of this table, right, from 60s, 70s, squeeze casting, single crystal, acetals, this, that, 1970 to 1990, and then the last part of the last century, 1990s to 2000s, right? Computer-aided design of molds and dies and so on, nanotechnology, nanophase materials, metal forms and so on, rapid prototyping and rapid tooling, friction stir welding, micro and nano fabrication and so forth, artificial intelligence, neural networks, right? So we are now in the ultra modern stage. So as I said that some diagrams and some tables of some books are remarkable. So you can take that from me. I can guarantee this, that you see lots and lots and lots of books on manufacturing in the world from brilliant authors. But this table 1.1 of Kalpakjian and Schmidt is remarkable, remarkable. If you keep this one table with you, then anytime later on in your life, you can give a brilliant seminar or lecture about how manufacturing developed through the ages from 6,000 years earlier to the modern time. So this is it. Now, my problem, or any teacher's, instructor's, professor's problem, you see, I would like you to really read it and understand it and enjoy it. Now, some of you enjoy it, some of you just do it because you have to do it, some of you don't want to do it. But I sometimes ask in my class that why are you here in my class? Right? Why are you in the College of Engineering? Why are you doing mechanical engineering? There are lots of different answers. But the main thing is that, you see, maybe your family has pressurized you to become an engineer. You did not want to do it. You wanted to do some painting and art, become an artist, right? Could be possible. But if you are here by your own choice, then it should not be that I thought that there will be more jobs in mechanical engineering, and I thought that there would be more jobs in civil engineering. That is one reason, okay. But the main thing is that I like this. I like machines. I like to work with buildings. You see, if you like to do what you do, then your job is much easier. You enjoy it also. You see, I and many of my friends, you see, I don't talk of that too much, but whether you are here in Oman or you are anywhere in the world, you are listening to these videos and lectures. You see, the people who are your professors, they were brilliant people at their undergraduate level. They were brilliant people at their undergraduate level. Otherwise, they would not be accepted for a master's degree in very big universities in the world. Then they were brilliant people at their master's level. Otherwise, they will neither be accepted for PhD programs at very famous universities in the world, nor would they go for it. You see, why would they go for a PhD? So they were brilliant at that time, and had they not gone for PhDs and so on, had they opted to go to the industry, because they have bachelors and masters from very good universities with very high GPA, and they are highly intelligent guys, they would excel in the industry. They would really go up. But they had some freaky nature, right? You can call it crazy, you can call it whatever you like, but they wanted to do a PhD. They wanted to do a PhD. They wanted to involve themselves in highest level of research that goes on in the world. And right, so they were a little crazy, but that is the good crazy. That is the type of crazy because of which the world is what it is today. If everyone who has a good science or engineering degree just goes to the normal industries for a job, then who are the guys who will do research? Who are the guys who will come up with new technology, new engineering, new materials? And if that is not there, then what will the world be? You love to have all these new gadgets and so on, a brilliant new laptop and a brilliant new computer, a very good phone, a brilliant car and this and that. But that has happened because of the crazy guys in engineering and science and technology, isn't it? Now, even out of those brilliant crazy people, because many of the guys after doing their PhDs and so on went to the industry, isn't it? After PhD, they are in the research and development wing, they are in the new technology division of PDO, for example, and so on, because these guys have done PhDs and they are brilliant. But some of them decided that they will come to the university and become teachers and academicians and researchers. So you see, these were brilliant people with very high GPAs. They could have gone to any industries they liked, and their salaries will be two times, 3 times the salaries that they will have at the university. So I want you and students everywhere in the world to really respect and feel that there is a lot of debt from you guys to these guys, that you see, if all of these brilliant guys had decided to remain in the industry, then you will not have these teachers. So whether you like their teaching style or not, whether you think that, oh, they are putting a lot of load on us, you should be really, really thankful and appreciative that these guys have deliberately decided not to have a lot of money and to earn a reasonably good amount of money and spend a lot of time in developing lectures and making lectures and teaching and grading and receiving almost no thanks from anybody. So these are seriously crazy guys, but these are the brilliant, good crazy guys because of which in every country in the world science and engineering goes on, because they decided to be your teachers. So please be thankful to them and so on. Why I went towards this is, you see, I want all of you to really seriously read this table. But this table will not tell you what is casting. This will not tell you what is extrusion. This will not tell you what is manufacturing. But this will really empower you. This will increase the depth and breadth of your knowledge. So many of you will skip it. So it started with, what have I as a problem? As a teacher, I have the problem that when I want you to read something, there is no other way but to tell you that this will be included in some quiz or exam. If I just say, please read through it, this is very, very brilliant for you, but I will not cover it in any quiz, then I don't know, 1%, 2%, 10% of the class may still be adventurous enough to go through it. But from me, please take it that everything that I cover in my lectures, everything, right, the material from the book, the material from my lecture notes, what I talk and speak about is going to come in some quiz or exam. Please take it as a guarantee. Please take it as a challenge, whatever you like it. But I want you to seriously read the book, to seriously go through the lecture notes, to seriously go through the video lectures, and to attempt all the problems and this and that, and to think about the material that has been covered. So everything that is covered in these lectures and in these lecture notes and in these topics in the book will be there somewhere on some quiz or some exam or somewhere. Please, right, make sure. Okay, so this history and evolution of manufacturing is gone. There is this one more slide about manufacturing importance. We are still in the part of the course where we are not really telling you what are the different classifications of manufacturing and so on, but we are just trying to excite you that this is very important. We are trying to instill in you the importance of manufacturing and technology for engineers and so on. So if you see the vertical axis, this is GDP per capita, gross domestic product, how much a country produces per capita in US dollars, 1,000 US dollars. And the horizontal axis is what is the contribution of manufacturing to GDP. This is the GDP, this is $10,000, $20,000 GDP per capita. And this is the contribution of manufacturing to GDP. You see, for example, in Oman, 60, 70, 80% of the contribution to GDP is just producing oil, no manufacturing. Right? The contribution of GDP, the contribution of manufacturing to GDP, I don't know if it is even 10% or 15% or whatever, because you have agricultural products, right? Dates and so on. You have fisheries, they also contribute, right? And then you have oil, 60, 70. So the contribution of manufacturing to GDP, this is one indicator which tells you how advanced the country is. Of course, this book, this diagram came in 2006 or around, right? 2006 or around. So this is about 15 years old, 14 years old. But even at that time, so now if you see, right? Ethiopia, Bangladesh, right? Ethiopia, Bangladesh. If you go vertically, very, very low GDP, very, very low GDP countries, right? Very low. But contribution, right? So if you go here, then the GDP, so Kuwait, for example, Kuwait is a rich country because the GDP is big, right? A small population, lot of money, so it is big. But then of course, Australia and USA are even larger in GDPs. Canada is here, Mexico is here, Japan is high, France is big, Germany is here. Thailand has really gone up, China is going up this is 2006, China is now somewhere here, hugely up. But how much is manufacturing contributing to it? 5%, right? 10%. So Kuwait, 90% is oil. Canada, Mexico, 15%. US, 15-20%. But Japan, France, Germany, China, 40% manufacturing, right? So in this diagram, you want to be up here and you want to be up here. If you are up here, you are a rich country. If you are up here, you are a rich country. So if Kuwait is here, we may be here. Saudi would be here, we may be here, we may be here, we may be here. But it is not that we should be here. We should be high here and we should be high here. If we are high on the horizontal axis, it means that manufacturing is a major serious business in our country. And 30%, 40% of our economy is based on manufacturing. Of course, you see again, oil and minerals and mining and fishing and agriculture would also contribute a lot. So if 50-60% is because of oil and minerals and agriculture and fisheries and so on, then at least 30-40% should be from manufacturing. So if we are trying to go there, we are a developing country. But if we are sticking that naturally agriculture comes and naturally oil comes and naturally fishes are there in our land, and that is all we are doing, our manufacturing contribution to GDP is only 5%, then very soon we will not be a part of the developed world and the rest of the world will be much higher and so on. And you see, you are engineers. So you are the people who in the next 40 years will be doing this for your country. That how much is your country going into engineering and technology and how many new companies and factories and so on come, right? So you are the guys on which the country is depending to go, so that the contribution of manufacturing and engineering to economy becomes more and more and more, inshallah.